It was just past 5 a.m. when Barron Trump stepped out of his apartment. The streets of Washington were still half asleep, the air sharp with dew and silence. He didn't check his phone. He didn't bring a security detail. All he wanted was to run to let his legs stretch far away from everything that had been suffocating him lately. Expectations, headlines, legacy. He felt all of it pressing down on him with an invisible weight. His footsteps echoed as he ran past coffee shops, still dark, the Capitol building in the distance, watching like a cold observer. He didn't have a direction in mind, only a need to move, to escape. But then something odd happened. As he slowed to catch his breath near a quiet intersection, he caught sight of a church, a small, historic one with white stone walls and ivy creeping along the sides. In its front door, it wasn't shut. The wooden doors were slightly ajar, letting in a faint golden light from within. Something about it, something he couldn't name, called to him. Why is it open this early? Barron thought, wiping the sweat from his brow. He stood still for a moment, his chest rising and falling, heart thudding in rhythm with a sense of unease. Then it came, not a voice, not even a sound, but something inside him that whispered, "You need this. Go in." He looked back down the street. He could just keep running. No one would know. But his feet, they didn't obey him. He stepped toward the church as if pulled by an unseen force. Inside, it was dim and hushed. The air smelled of old wood, candle wax, and something ancient. There were only two other people, both kneeling silently in the front pews, heads bowed. He thought about turning around, but he didn't. Instead, he walked down the aisle, slowly, his sneakers quiet on the floor. He slipped into the last pew, sat down and exhaled. His hands trembled slightly and he didn't know why. That's when he noticed the candle. One single votive candle placed near the altar was flickering weakly. It danced like it was about to go out. And just as he looked away, it flared up again, steady and bright. That small flickering flame. Somehow it mirrored him. "Sometimes the light waits until you're watching," said a voice softly. Barron turned. He hadn't noticed the man sitting beside him. He was in his 60s, wearing the plain black robes of a priest. His eyes were kind but ancient, as though he had seen many things and spoken a few. "Good morning," said the priest. "Would you like to talk?" Barron hesitated. His throat tightened. Something in him wanted to reject the offer, to shake his head, to get up and leave. But instead he nodded. "I think I'm lost," Barron said after a long silence. "I've been trying to move forward, but I'm not even sure I know what that means anymore." The priest offered a slight smile and leaned back in the pew. "Everyone gets lost," the man replied gently. "What matters is whether you stop walking or keep searching." Barron looked away for a moment, eyes fixed on the flickering candle again. "I don't know what I'm searching for," he admitted. "Maybe that's not something to fear," the priest answered quietly. "Maybe it's the beginning of something." The pew creaked gently as Barron shifted, trying to find comfort in a place that felt both unfamiliar and strangely safe. Outside, the sun was just beginning to touch the stained glass windows, casting soft hues of blue and crimson across the wooden floor. The priest sat still beside him, neither rushing nor retreating. It was the kind of silence that didn't demand to be broken, but gently invited honesty. "Do you believe in God?" Barron asked, almost surprised by the sound of his own voice. The priest gave a thoughtful pause before answering. "I believe he listens more than we think," the priest said with a calm warmth. "But I've also learned that it's okay to doubt. Faith isn't a straight line. It's more like a long conversation with silence." Barron took that in slowly, his eyes never leaving the flame near the altar. "My father, he talks about strength, about winning, about legacy," Barron said, his tone steady but distant. "But no one ever talks about weakness, or confusion, or waking up and not knowing if the person in the mirror is someone you respect." The priest nodded quietly and folded his hands together. "Those are holy questions," he replied. "The world rewards certainty, but God often speaks through your questions, through the space where certainty fails." Barron let the words settle before continuing. "I used to pray. I think I was 10. I would ask for things: a good game, a peaceful dinner, to not feel so alone in a room full of cameras," he explained. "But I stopped. It felt like no one was listening." The priest gently turned his head to look at him. "What did you want most when you prayed?" he asked. Barron hesitated. His voice dropped almost to a whisper. "To be seen, not by millions. Just seen." The priest closed his eyes for a moment, as if honoring the weight of that answer. "You know," he began softly, "sometimes when we feel the most invisible, we're being watched the most carefully by God. Not the spotlight kind of watching, but the quiet, patient, loving kind." Barron's jaw clenched slightly. He looked down at his hands. "I didn't come in here to talk," he said. I just, I couldn't run anymore. Not from something outside, from something inside." The priest nodded slowly, then looked toward the candle. "And maybe that's why the door was open," he replied. "Some things you don't run from. Some things you meet. Right here." For the first time, Barron looked at the man directly. The priest's eyes didn't judge, didn't pity, they simply accepted. "Is it too late to begin again?" Barron asked, voice breaking just slightly at the edge. The priest didn't answer right away. He smiled faintly and gestured toward the candle, now burning strong and steady. "Not if the flame is still burning," he said softly. The church was still quiet. The two strangers at the front pews had left without Barron noticing. Now the sun poured more boldly through the stained glass, throwing patches of color on his shoes, on the wood, on the priest's robe. Barron stayed seated, no longer restless. There was a different kind of stillness now, not the kind that weighed him down, but the kind that held him gently. "I don't think I know how to be that kind of person," Barron finally said. "The one who believes in something bigger, the one who's at peace." The priest didn't respond immediately. He simply reached down to the small Bible resting beside him, opened it, and laid it gently on the pew between them. "You don't become that person overnight," he said patiently. "Peace isn't found like a key. It's grown like a seed. You don't even have to believe perfectly. You just have to start showing up." Barron looked at the open page but didn't read it. His eyes were drawn again to the candle, still burning. "I've spent so long being watched that I forgot how to actually see," he admitted. "People have ideas of me, what I should be, what I represent, but none of them ask who I actually am." "And who are you?" the priest asked gently. Barron let out a breath. He looked down at his hands, then slowly raised his eyes to the crucifix above the altar. "I think I'm still figuring that out," he replied. "But I know I'm not the sum of other people's expectations. And I'm tired of pretending I have nothing to say just because people already have their headlines written." The priest gave a small nod of approval, then closed the Bible. "Then maybe it's time to write your own," he said quietly. They both stood. Barron didn't know how long he had been there, but it felt like time had shifted, like something had cracked open inside him. "Thank you," he said sincerely. The priest gave him a warm, understanding smile. "Come back anytime," he said. "The door's never locked, and neither is he." As Barron walked back down the aisle, each step felt less heavy. The candle flame followed him in the corner of his eye, steady, unwavering. At the threshold, he paused and turned back one last time. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. Outside, the city had begun to wake. Cars passed. Joggers moved in rhythm. Barron slipped back onto the sidewalk, his steps lighter, though the world hadn't changed. But something inside him had. He didn't know where this would take him. He didn't have a 5-year plan or a viral quote to offer the world. But for the first time in a long while, he wasn't running away from the silence. He was walking with it. It wasn't the candle itself that changed Barron, it was what it represented. Something fragile, something almost gone, yet still alive. That's what faith is. That's what hope is. Not certainty, not victory, but a flicker that refuses to die. For Barron, the moment inside that church wasn't about religion in a traditional sense. It wasn't about redemption or confession. It was about permission. Permission to be uncertain. Permission to ask. Permission to feel. The world had taught him to armor up, to be polished, poised, and perfect. But in the sacred hush of a forgotten pew, he learned that being real was far more powerful than being flawless. And maybe that's what we all forget sometimes, that no matter how lost we feel, no matter how many people misread us or reduce us to roles and headlines, we still carry within us a flame. We still deserve to be seen. And maybe, just maybe, there's always a door slightly open, waiting for us to walk through. Not because we have answers, but because we're finally ready to ask the right questions. Let's keep the conversation going. Subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts below. Your perspective is valuable and might inspire others.